Let's continue the evidence fact-check investigation, persecution of Christians that no party wants to speak about, no political party wants to speak about, no government wants to talk about, but they can stand with other people. So let's dive into this.
70 Christians were just beheaded and hardly anyone is talking about it. Why is that the case, and why did this happen in the first place?
So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. The peaceful majority were irrelevant.
How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Something that brings them together, whether it's ISIS, whether it's the Taliban, whether it's Al-Qaeda, whether it's the Muslim Brotherhood, whether it's dozens of others, is Sharia. And we do have to get that straight.
You can go to the Quran, you can go to the Hadith, you can go to the Sirah, these are like biographies of Muhammad, you go to the Tafsir, these are the commentaries. Wherever you go, you'll always find some sort of successive stages of jihad depending on how things are going for the Muslim community.
In this video, we're going to put together several key pieces that make sense of why this type of atrocity continues to happen. Let's begin.
In a chilling escalation of violence, the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, has once again become a blood-soaked battleground for Islamist militants. As Congolese forces struggle to contain the threat and regional tensions with neighbors like Rwanda flare, the Islamist grip tightens. With ISIS's ideological backing, the group has morphed from a local insurgency into a sophisticated terror network, leaving a trail of bodies and broken communities. For the DRC's Christians, each day brings fresh fear of abduction, execution, or displacement. As the world watches, the question looms: how much longer can this beleaguered nation withstand the Islamist onslaught? For now, the faithful flee, the dead wait for burial, and the ADF's shadow grows darker over the Congo.
Now, there was a moment during a Q&A where Brigitte Gabriel provided an answer to an important question. This perspective is essential to understand. Check this out.
I am here to ask you a simple question. I know that we portray Islam and all Muslims as bad, but there's 1.8 billion Muslim followers of Islam. We have 8 million plus Muslim Americans in this country, and I don't see them represented here. But my question is, how can we fight an ideological war with weapons? How can we ever end this war? The jihadist ideology that you talk about, it's an ideology. How can you ever win this thing if you don't address it ideologically?
Many in the government, if they're thinking about this at all, are focused on the sort of dangling shiny object, dangerous as it is, of violent jihad. But they're missing entirely that other piece that I talked about in connection with Huma Abedin and others, which is the subversion, the not so much non-violent form of jihad as the pre-violent form of jihad, with which they hope ultimately to take us down just as surely as the others who embrace violent jihad seek to do. But at the end of the day, it is something that brings them together, whether it's ISIS, whether it's the Taliban, whether it's Al-Qaeda, whether it's the Muslim Brotherhood, whether it's dozens of others, is Sharia. And we do have to get that straight.
Yeah.
Great. Great question. I am so glad you're here, and I am so glad you brought that up because it gives us an opportunity to answer. What I find so amazing is since the beginning of this panel, which we are here about Benghazi attack against our people, not one person mentioned Muslims. We are here against Islam, or we're launching war against Muslims. We are here to discuss how 4 Americans died and what our government is doing. We were not here to bash Muslims. You were the one who brought up the issue about most Muslims, not us. And since you brought it up, allow me to elaborate with my answer. There are 1.2 billion Muslims in the world today. Of course, not all of them are radicals. The majority of them are peaceful people. The radicals are estimated to be between 15 to 25% according to all intelligence services around the world. That leaves 75% of them peaceful people. But when you look at 15 to 25% of the world Muslim population, you're looking at 180 million to 300 million people dedicated to the destruction of Western civilization. That is as big of the United States. So why should we worry about the radicals, 15 to 25%? Because it is the radicals that kill. Because it is the radicals that behead and massacre. When you look throughout history, when you look at all the lessons of history, most Germans were peaceful. Yet the Nazis drove the agenda. And as a result, 60 million people died. Almost 14 million in concentration camps. 6 million were Jews. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at China, for example, most Chinese were peaceful as well. Yet the Chinese were able to kill 70 million people. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. When you look at Japan prior to World War II, most Japanese were peaceful as well. Yet Japan was able to butcher its way across Southeast Asia, killing 12 million people, mostly killed with bayonets and shovels. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. On September 11th in the United States, we had 2.3 million Arab Muslims living in the United States. It took 19 hijackers, 19 radicals to bring America down to its knees, destroy the World Trade Center, attack the Pentagon, and kill almost 3,000 Americans that day. The peaceful majority were irrelevant. So for all our powers of reasons and us talking about moderate and peaceful Muslims, I'm glad you're here. But where are the others speaking out? And since you are the only Muslim representative...
Okay, now I want to play you guys a portion of a conversation that I recently had with David Wood because he covers a couple other angles of this that I do think are extremely important. So let's dive in. I'm asking you to kind of help bridge some of these gaps and to speak to this issue from more of a religious, spiritual perspective. Help us understand what's the connection points here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could kind of start off with just the general lead up to offensive jihad that we find in the Muslim sources. Muslims will go, especially Western Muslims, will go to passages in the Quran and say, look here, it says there's no compulsion in religion. See, that's what Islam teaches. So all these people trying to force religion on people, they have nothing to do with Islam. And it never crosses their mind to actually read a verse in context or to read it in its historical context or to interpret it in the light of the most relevant component of interpreting the Quran here, which is doctrine of abrogation, where earlier revelations can be canceled or abrogated by later revelations. None of that. Just here's this verse, so you see Islam is peaceful. Whereas you can go to the classical commentators. No one interpreted if you go through the first 1,000 years of Islam, no one interprets these verses the way that modern Western Muslims try to make these verses sound peaceful. So what you actually find when you go to, matter of fact, you could go anywhere. You could go to the Quran, that's supposedly the speech of Allah. You can go to the Hadith. This is the works and teachings of Muhammad. You can go to the Sirah. These are like biographies of Muhammad. You go to the Tafsir. These are the commentaries. Wherever you go, you find, and they'll break it down a little differently, but you'll always find some sort of successive stages of jihad depending on how things are going for the Muslim community. And so if you just go to the life of Muhammad, when Muhammad is a persecuted prophet in Mecca and he only has about 100 followers, he preached a message of a kind of tolerance. Hey, don't attack us. We're not attacking you. Let God judge. And people will go to these verses and say, you see, that's what Islam teaches. No, that was in that context. Later on, Muhammad leaves Mecca and he goes to Medina, sets up shop there. He forms some alliances, and by this time he has more followers. Then the message of the Quran changes to one of defensive jihad. You're fighting, but you're fighting because someone else did something first. So this could be someone's persecuting the Muslim community, or someone drove you off your land or something like that. Someone's attack. It could even be like criticism. Someone's making fun of you and you need to retaliate with violence. But the main idea of the defensive jihad stage is someone else is starting it. Someone else is doing something first, and now you're reacting to it. And so you have Muslims who will point to these passages and say, look, it says, fight them until they stop fighting you. Look, so there it is. It's self-defense. That wasn't the final marching orders either, because later Muhammad and his companions formed the most powerful group in society. So they dominate the Arabian Peninsula, and the message changes to one of offensive jihad. And there it's fighting people because of what they believe. At this point, you're not fighting people because they attacked you or because they persecuted you or anything else. You're fighting people specifically because of what they believe. And so this is offensive jihad. And what's amazing here is you can look at any country in the world. It still follows this pattern. If Muslims make up like 1% of the population, then what's the message of Islam there? It's, hey, Islam is all about peace and tolerance, getting along with everyone. If the Muslim population gets to 20 or 30%, suddenly the preachers start calling for defensive jihad. Oh, they're criticizing Islam, they're saying this, they're saying that. Then we retaliate with violence. And once you get to where Muslims dominate the society, everyone else has to be a second-class citizen. Everyone else has to be subjugated. And so it's just amazing that here we are 14 centuries later, and the same pattern that we find in the life of Muhammad is now imprinted on countries around the world. So the one way to think about it, and we can think of this from a Christian perspective because we're familiar with this. You have violent passages in the Old Testament and so on. But if you were to read the Bible from beginning to end and say, what am I commanded to do now? It wouldn't be, hey, go fight the Canaanites or something like that. We have commands that are directed towards us. So we understand our final marching orders, right? There are all sorts of things happen along the way. But the covenant that we are under and the commands that are directed towards us are things like love your neighbor as yourself, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, and so on. There's a role for governments to do things and to maintain order and so on. But as far as how we are to live as Christians, we understand what our final marching orders are, and we understand how that differs from marching orders for groups that came before us. In Islam, it's kind of the reverse. Muhammad starts off and it's, hey, let's not fight here. And then eventually, okay, we will fight. But if you guys start it. And then eventually you get to Surah 9, verse 29, fight those who do not believe in Allah. And it specifically refers to the people of the book, that's Jews and Christians. It says we have to be subjugated until we pay the jizya, that's tribute money we pay to the Muslim community, specifically to acknowledge our inferior status. We're paying you because you're better. And Muslims will say context. It's weird that it doesn't come up when they're quoting passages that are supposedly peaceful. They don't want to read those in context. But when you can read the context of the commands to fight those who do not believe, read the entire context. There's not one word about this being about self-defense. Every justification for fighting Jews and Christians and subjugating us and making us pay money in that passage, and anyone can read it. The entire passage starts Surah 9, verse 28, goes on to Surah 9, verse 33. There isn't one word about self-defense. Every justification for fighting us is our basic religious beliefs or practices. Christians have to be subjugated because we say Jesus is the Son of God. Jews have to be subjugated because they supposedly call Ezra the Son of God, even though you will have trouble finding one Jew in all of history who said that. That's the Quranic justification for violently subjugating Jews. And so if you were to read the Quran and say, what are the commands that are directed towards me? Not what was directed towards Muslims in Mecca when they made up a tiny percentage of the population. What are the commands directed towards me specifically now? Interestingly, that's going to come down to what sort of situation you're in, because the overarching pattern that you find in the Quran is you do what is in the best interest of the Muslim community at a certain time. So if you are 1% of the population, you can't hope to win a physical confrontation with the unbelievers. Do what Muhammad did when he was in that situation. What did he do? Peace and tolerance. If you get to a point where you can fight, but you're not able to dominate a society, great, fight defensively. Other people start something, do something, criticize or something. You have a violent reaction to let people know that won't be tolerated and that any sort of provocation will lead to violence. If you form the biggest group in society, then you subjugate everyone and everyone becomes a second-class citizen. And so that's the pattern that you find in Islam. I would just want to be clear when I say this, it doesn't mean your average Muslim knows this. If you're talking to a Muslim here in the US and he says Islam is a religion of peace and tolerance, he probably believes it. He might not, but he probably believes something like that because that's what the Muslim preachers will say in this kind of context. And so I don't want everyone running around saying, aha, you say Islam's a religion of peace, but I know once you get to power, you want to subjugate people. We're talking about what Islam actually teaches here, and not what a particular Muslim believes, but that is what Islam teaches, that jihad proceeds in stages, and the final goal is subjugating the entire world, so that, as the Quran says, all religion is for Allah.
Once again, you've seen the evidence and people talking about it, and no other media wants to talk about it. You have heard people get cancelled, people get blocked because of spreading what is true. So, once again, this is a call out to everyone who wants peace. What's up? Who's your leader? What you stand for? Who you following? And what their hearts are full of. Their mouth will say. Because you get political leaders, party leaders that swears at you, that disrespects you, that calls you foul words, and that's your leader. Good luck. There's no blessing on that leader. Some more news on the killing. This is in Syria again. So let's watch who's behind this killing of Christians, the persecution of Christians.
All right, guys, there's some really, really sad persecution happening right now in Syria. Once again, not getting mainstream media coverage, but thousands of Christians are being dragged out of their homes and murdered in the streets, their bodies left in the roads, children, women. It's just horrific. It's unbelievable. These are our brothers and sisters. The Bible says that those that are suffering in prison for Christ, to remember them as though we were suffering in our own bodies. And so these people are being literally slaughtered. It's unbelievable. Like I said, I can't put into words how sad it is. This is a guy who is from the village where this is happening. And then we're going to go over a full breakdown of what's going on. An advocate for these Christians is gonna speak here after. But let's just react to this. There's really no words for how sad this is, but I want to call you guys to prayer, and I want to call you guys to action to just remember them and to think about them and to pray for them and to be aware, since the mainstream media refuses to cover it. We'll cover it here. These videos do get demonetized. They get blocked. Our last one got age restricted for 18 plus, and it got demonetized, but it is what it is. We're going to keep making them, even if they get flagged and blocked. Let's watch this together. This is just horrific.
My face, because if they see me, they will kill me. I'm from Syria. I live now in the city of Latakia. Please, please, please. The media is not showing you anything. The terrorists are killing everyone.
Ugh.
Children, women, teenagers, old people, just killing. There is more than 100 body in my village now.
100 bodies in his village. And there was a video of, oh man, it just gets me emotional, of them going in and literally dragging out these Christians, children and women, and throwing them into the street, and they're killing them and leaving them in the road. Of course, the video wasn't necessarily graphic because it wasn't showing the killings, but it's just too, in my opinion, it's too horrific to show. It's horrific what they're doing and how they're going into homes and pulling people out. It's just unbelievable.
Even in the city, they are just taking the children and the women and kill them. I don't know what to do with my mom and my two sisters.
Ugh.
Please, you gotta help us. Nobody's talking anything about it. Not the social media or the TV channels. They are all hiding the truth. They are saying that they are killing the resistance, but this is end up 2 days ago. Please, you gotta help us. They have been killing people since 2 days until now. Hundred of bodies are thrown in the street, in the villages, and in the city of Syria. We are not allowed to go out of the house. They just come to the houses, take the people, kill them outside of the house, and take all the phones so nobody record or do anything. Please, you gotta help us. I have two sisters. I have two sisters.
They're even killing them, their own. If you're a Muslim and you don't want to stand with them by killing others, or you're not in a jihad, or I don't know what they call this, so Muslim extremists, if you're not standing with them, they kill you as well as a Muslim. They kill Christians, they kill anyone in their way. They clean it up because they believe that Allah called them to persecute anyone who doesn't believe in Islam, who doesn't believe in Allah, who doesn't accept the religion. So watch out. That's why you will get many of the Muslims fleeing to other countries. But then they also want the Sharia law, like what's happening now in UK, London, in Britain, in Berlin, in Germany. There's a lot of videos going around where they all want the Sharia law. But once it is in, they flee again because they will also be killed. Because you need to dress a certain way, you need to do certain things. You as a woman or a lady can't speak out, you can't say anything, your face must be completely closed. You can't look around, you must just stay at home, you can't study, you can't go read, you can't go out to the store, you can't go shopping, you can't do your nails, you can't blow your hair, you can't buy your GSD. Yes, it sounds silly, but this is the reality, and that is what they're forcing now. But I thank God for the uprising in the Christians that are waking up and are standing against this. There's big marches of Christians now in the UK. There's big marches of Christians in Germany that's standing up against the Sharia law. The marriages of young children, like the men can get married to younger children. It's all stuff that they are marching for and protesting for. And then also, I thank Poland for their stand, for what they are doing. You must see how the immigrants is trying to get in there, breaking down the borders, fighting to get into Poland, because Poland doesn't want them there, because Poland is a Christian country, and also there is no raping, stats of raping. There's nothing, no crime, it's safe there. But when they start allowing this Muslim immigrants from Palestine starting to come in, they are mixed with Hamas, and then that's where the problem started. And that's why Poland closed the borders to say no to any Muslim, besides if you are Christian or any other belief. So now they are fighting to get in, and they're saying it's unfair. How can they say it's unfair if it's Poland's country? If imagine someone wants to get into your house, then they protesting in front of your house saying, yeah, you don't want to let us come in, it's unfair. How is it unfair if it's your house? That makes sense. So, once again, I'm going to say, people, watch out for the political parties you support, who you support, who's your leader, how they speak, how they act, because that's going to show you what their heart is full of. And the agendas they have. Behind everything they do, there's an agenda. And I thank God for the PA, for Umbiza that went over to Israel and Palestine to fact check. Really, that's only God, because just think about it. Who would ever thought that someone like God will use someone like that to go over to do something like that? Come on, Christians, I want you to wake up. I want you Christians to stand together. Let's pray together. We don't need the streets. We don't need to march. We don't need to have postcards. We don't need to protest. We don't need to block streets. We don't need to riot. We don't need to do nothing. All we need to do is go pray, give it over to God, and you will see how God moves in this. So let us continue spreading what is really happening around the world. And I'm gonna put that videos on of Poland. I'm gonna put that videos on of England. I'm gonna put that videos on of everything that is being hid from us. The media that doesn't want to show it to us. I'm gonna put that videos on here.
I don't know what to do with them. if it's okay for me if I die, but not for my two sisters or my mom. One of them is a teenager. Please, you gotta help us. Nobody's talking anything about it. Human rights, United Nations, anyone, America, anyone, just please help us. You need to do, you need, you need to do something about it. The social media is not showing anything. Most of my relative people are dead in my village. There is bodies in the street. We are afraid for the little kids. There is nobody left. Like we are being killed. All of us, all the Alawite and the Christian. For God's sake, if you believe in humanity, if you believe in any religion that you want, just please, you need to save us. You need to do something about this. The TV is not showing anything, not Al Jazeera, not any TV channel. They are all covering what's happening now. Until this moment, there is people coming from another from another cities from Syria, like Idlib and Hama and Homs. They are coming just to kill people. They are still coming until now and killing people randomly. Not women or children or anything. They kill everybody. They are demons. They are not human beings.
They are demons. And the lady who we're going to listen to in a minute, who's an advocate for the persecuted church in Syria, she literally says it's demonic. Like, these people are demon possessed, demon influenced, and demonized in every sense of the word that are doing this. It's just darkness, as dark as it gets.
And nobody's talking anything about it. I don't know what will happen to me in the next hour.
So sad. It's just horrific, man.
Please, human rights, United Nations, anyone who can hear me, just please save us. You need to do something quickly. We are running out of time. There is no more Christian or Alawite to kill anymore. You need to save what the rest of us. I'm covering my face now.
Oh man, it just makes me sick. It's just so sad. He's pleading for help. And one of the reasons why we're showing all this is because this is what he's asking. Show this to people, let people know what's going on. This girl does a really good job. We're going to watch this of breaking down what's going on, the massacre that's happening. So don't have TikTok brain right now and just click off, because it is about 9 minutes, 10 minutes. This gives us a full picture, though, of what's happening in Syria, why the Christians are being murdered. And literally, some of these Christians, I don't know the good word for it, but they're going extinct. There was hundreds of thousands. Now there's literally, she says, like in one village, there's like 1,200 Christians where there was 100,000 before, because they're getting killed. One of the reasons why the media, for those of you wondering, is not covering this is because this is happening by Islamic extremists. And they want to continue to paint the picture that Islam is the religion of peace, when in reality, it is not the religion of peace. This is what's happening right now. And let's watch this. So just be patient and let's listen.
Eric scope of the massacre in Syria continues to expand. Syrian Christians are once again caught in the crossfire. Juliana Taimoorazi, Nobel Peace Prize nominee for advancing awareness of the persecution of Christians in the Middle East, joins us now. Juliana, what are you hearing from Syria?
Awful, terrible news, terrible news. Yesterday, I heard that there were 15 doctors that were murdered because they were Alawites, supposedly supporters of Assad, women, children, men. I must warn your audience about what I'm about to say. It's a little bit gruesome. I've watched videos that I can never unsee again. I've seen hearts being carved out of bodies. I have seen duct tape being placed on men's eyes, and then they stand them on the mass graves and shoot them, and they don't die, and then they beat them after they have shot them. The dehumanization that is happening on the ground. They make them bark like dogs. They make them walk on legs.
So demonic. So demonic. This is just darkness, as dark as it gets. And you know, I'm sitting again in my nice air-conditioned studio, a fan on me. I could see outside, beautiful day. Oh man, it makes me emotional. And it's just, these people are going through this right now as we speak. And the Bible says to remember them as though we are suffering with them, and to pray for them. I just can't imagine it. It's inconceivable to me, you know. Yeah, I just can't.
And their hands on their knees and hands. It is absolutely an atrocity. We read, I'm a student of the Holocaust. and we read those things in the pages of history, right? And then we recently came from 10 years ago was the ISIS genocide in Iraq. But really, this is on a different scale, on another scale. Why are they killing the children? The children were not supporters of Assad. And the Christians that have come under attack, they're terrified, absolutely terrified.
Oh, that is just demonic. There's no other way to describe it. Help us understand. So it seems like the reports are that this is mainly against the Alawites, right? The nationality, the ethnicity of the former Assad regime. But Christians are also being targeted. Can you help explain that for us?
So the Alawites are they're considered to be heretic to the Muslims, and therefore they're not protected by the jihadists, if you will. Christians are people of the book. And because they're a small minority and because of the atrocities that Assad had committed, also last week, I believe it was Thursday, when some supporters of Assad attacked the forces of this new regime. This regime is brutal. Please don't get me wrong, but they ambushed these new forces, and this is what's transpiring right now is in retaliation of what happened in the hands of the Assad supporters. The other thing that I have to really tell your audience is that when the West welcomed al-Jolani to power, how quickly do we forget that this man was an Al-Qaeda member, an ISIS member, when he was in Idlib, which is in northern part of Syria. They were using Turkish lira, supported by Turkey. How quickly do we forget? As soon as he puts a suit on and a necktie, he becomes a Westerner. So, this massive attack that has been happening against the Alawites, it is systematic. You hear them speak. Oh, and very importantly, I must say that the fighters, you look at them, you watch these videos, the fighters are not Arabs, all of them. They're Chechens, there are Indonesians, there are Jordanians, there are Tajiks from Tajikistan. I mean, you will find there are some Americans. Apparently, there was a report that said that there are Americans, just like they were embedded with ISIS. So this very diverse, very brutal group is committing demonic acts.
Once again, you hear the word demonic because that's what it is. Call it what it is. These are people are inspired by demons. Then
Against the Alawites and Christians. As far as Christians are concerned, we are people of the book, yes, but we're connected to Christendom. We're infidels, although we had been there as Christians for 2,000 years, but we were there before all these regimes took over and came along. We are considered, by extension, connected to the West. And because we worship the cross, because we worship Jesus Christ, we have to pay a heavy price for them, for that belief. So the churches have been targeted. The children have been targeted. Families have been massacred. And this happened also last year. This is not the first time under this regime. This happened last year too.
So you have an incredible backstory in the sense that you are an Assyrian Christian who grew up in Iran, and now your focus is on Christians in Iraq and Syria. Can you help? Maybe if we're just kind of late to the story, what has it been like for Christians in Syria since the Arab Spring started a decade and a half ago?
It's been terrible. We have suffered tremendously for our faith.
And this is something that most of us, now I know there's a lot of international viewers, and maybe you could relate, but most of us have no clue what persecution is. We cannot relate in the slightest. Like, oh, what could I think of? Somebody made a YouTube video about me calling me false. Like, that's nothing. That's literally nothing. Someone made fun of me at work. Somebody made fun of me at church. Yet these people are suffering for their faith, physically being killed and tortured and murdered, and children killed in front of them. Hearts carved out, as she said, for their faith. And we know nothing about this. We know absolutely nothing about this.
There have been our bishops have been kidnapped. They haven't been found yet. There were so many Christians that when the prisons were liberated, or they were, we can say liberated, right? In this case, There were so many Christians that came out that we had thought that they had been killed. Look, in the Middle East, we have always been considered as a bridge of understanding between the Islamic East and the Christian West. And but the number of people that is dwindling, our numbers are dropping fast from every country you can imagine. As you said, I was born in Iran. When I was in Iran in the 80s, we were probably about 50,000 Assyrian Christians. Today, we have literally 3,000 people left
40 or 50,000. Now she said, what'd she say, 4,000? Think about how crazy
throughout
that
the whole
is.
country. 3,000 people.
3,000 people.
Iraq, my ancestral homeland, our ancestral homeland. Second Holy Land, really, for all the biblical activities that had happened there. We were 1.5 million before the invasion of Iraq in 2003. Today, we have barely 100,000 people left. In Syria, the Assyrian community is 1,200 people. That's the Assyrian community, Christian Assyrian community. Overall, the Christian population into the millions we used to be. Now we're about 500,000, 400,000 people in Syria.
Unbelievable.
So our numbers are dwindling because of change in demographic. What's happening today, as you see, has happened to Christians in Syria before in 2015, also in 2011. And we see that people just don't want to live like that under so much distress, dehumanized, churches bombed, clergy kidnapped. So it's a really, really tough situation. So my call, if I may, in a very small way and humbly ask the world powers to open a corridor, especially for Christians and other minorities, to safety, whether it be into Iraq, into the Iraqi Kurdistan. I would have never thought I would say, let's open a corridor into Iraqi Kurdistan or protect them as they flee to the Druze area in the south. Druze are protected by the state of Israel at the moment. So a lot of people that I'm in contact with on the ground in the western part of the country, in Syria, they say, help us flee to the Druze area, open a corridor to Iraq, we'll go to Iraq. So I'm just
So
a
sad.
small voice for the people that are suffering there.
So if this current massacre is predominantly targeting Alawites, again, the ethnicity of the former Assad regime, it's kind of, retribution, revenge. How do Christians in Syria view this? Like, they're not the direct target, quote unquote, right now, but what is their feelings? What is their anticipation of what could happen in the weeks and months ahead?
The church leadership has gone and met with the al-Jolani regime several times. But when you speak to the average people on the street, they will tell you they don't have any hope for the future. Economy is terrible there. And I think there's, in some parts of the country, there's 80% unemployment. Among Christians, there's 60% unemployment. So from an economic perspective,
Wow.
they're devastated. They just had an earthquake 2 years ago that devastated them. And the Islamic radicalism constantly chases them from place to place. There's so many Christians that have been killed. And I vehemently disagree that some reports say that Christians are just collateral damage, that they're not really targeted. I must disagree with this because we have seen we're always there, maybe caught in the crossfire, some say, but majority of the time we are targeted because they go after our churches, they go after our priests and our families.
So sad. Guys, we need to pray for them. We need to pray that the Lord would be with them. Oh, wrong camera here. There we go. We need to pray that the Lord would be with them because it's just devastating what's going on there. I just wanted to make everyone aware of this.
So yeah, there you have it, once again. I'm not gonna say much. I'm too upset, too angry, and I'm gonna say things that I shouldn't be saying. All I wanna do is make you all aware of what is happening, that the media doesn't want you to know. I had a channel before where I exposes things and I was cancelled. Now I'm doing it again and I'm not gonna stop. I'm gonna continue doing what I'm doing. Standing up for our Christian brothers and sisters in Christ. This video that I'm going to share now is mainly focused on Christianity, the killing of the Christians in Congo, Nigeria, and Syria. I'm gonna make a few videos. I'm gonna post it because the truth needs to be revealed. Things need to be exposed. And also we're gonna look at who's behind this killing of Christians, what belief it is, what religion it is, why they're doing it, and what the Bible say about it. Because all that we hear is Palestine, Israel, Palestine, Israel. What about the Christians? What about the very same people that you march for in the streets? It's the people that persecute the Christians. So I'm going to be the voice for the Christian community, for the Christian people that are being killed right around the world. So let's dive into this video and let us eyes be open and let us be woke. Let us wake up for what is really happening with the Christians that no one wants to talk about, no media wants to talk about it, there's no hashtags for it. All that you see is Israel and Palestine. So let's dive into this.
Last weekend, 70 Christians were beheaded for their faith inside of a church, and you probably didn't hear about it until right now. We all remember the London terrorist attack that targeted Muslims, killing one man, and how it rightly dominated headlines. But when it comes to 70 Christians, the media is virtually silent. And this isn't just an oversight, it's part of a much bigger problem. A pattern that reveals something deeply disturbing about what's really happening in our world. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. To understand why this happened, we need to go back to the slow but steady rise of Islam in Congo. For most of its history, Congo was a Christian majority nation, thanks to the missionaries who built schools, hospitals, and churches in the late 19th century. But after independence in 1960, something changed. Islamic communities, once restricted, were now free to organize and expand, and this set the stage for the tragedy that happened last week. The group behind this massacre is known as the ADF, the Allied Democratic Forces, who are associated with ISIS and founded by this man, Jamil Makulu, a former Catholic and convert to Islam. So here's what happened. It was early in the morning of February 12th when the ADF struck. Armed militants stormed the homes of Christians, yelling for them to come outside. Terrified families woke to the sound of gunfire and screaming, and one by one, they were dragged from their homes at gunpoint and were kidnapped and forced to march with the militants. Now, this happened over the span of a few days as they gathered nearly 100 Christians and forced them to carry loot for them as they continued to gather more Christians and killing those along the way who couldn't physically endure. Now, all of this kept going on until eventually they arrived at a Protestant church in eastern Congo. Once inside, the Christians were tied up, tortured, and then one by one, sadly, they were beheaded. Mothers, fathers, and children all slaughtered inside of their own church. The bodies of over 70 victims, including women, children, and the elderly, were found inside the church the next day. Now, as tragic as the story is, it should have been international news, but chances are you hadn't even heard about it until now, and there's a growing sentiment among people who believe that the reason why is because the victims were Christians. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time that the media has ignored Christian persecution, which is why it's more important than ever to know when the news is being selectively reported, and that's where today's sponsor comes in, Ground News. Ground News gathers articles from over 50,000 sources and shows you how they're being covered across the political spectrum, letting you see the full picture. So, for example, when it comes to this story about the massacre in Congo, only 46 sources have covered it so far, and out of those, only 3 of them are left-leaning. And if you go over here to the bias comparison tool, you can also see how the left, the right, and the center are all covering the same story. The right correctly emphasizes how it was Christians that were beheaded, while 2 of the 3 sources reporting it on the left refer to them as missing people. The bias couldn't be more clear. Another feature that I love is the blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. So if you look at this story right here, only 13% of right-wing outlets covered the fact that the rebels in Congo have killed over 7,000 people this year, and that is a massive blind spot. So ground news has become a valuable tool for me, especially as a Christian seeking truth and integrity in media. And if you want to try ground news today, just go to groundnews.com/whatdoyoumeme and get 40% off of unlimited access with the Vantage plan. All right, now back to our video. So we left off with this growing sentiment of people who believe that the reason why the media hasn't covered this story is because the victims were Christians.
Why is no one reporting this? Why does no one seem to care? If you were to replace 70 Congolese Christian with any other minority group, 70 Palestinians were beheaded, 70 people at a pride parade were beheaded, this would be the biggest news story of the decade. And yet this just happened and no one's reporting on it. And literally crickets.
Because these were Christians, Congolese Christians, the world just seems to shrug.
And it's not hard to see why people feel this way. I mean, compare the mainstream coverage of the Congo massacre to this story. In 2017, a man drove a van into a group of Muslims near the Finsbury Park Mosque in London, and in the attack, a 51-year-old man was tragically killed and 9 others were injured. This attack made global headlines. CNN, BBC, The Guardian, nearly every major outlet covered it extensively. The UK government even released an official statement condemning it, and politicians all around the world spoke out. But when it comes to not just one Christian, but 70 that were killed for their faith, well, apart from Fox News, at least at the time of this recording, there seems to be complete silence from the major media outlets. And this isn't just a one-time thing. Christians are being murdered for their faith all around the world, yet the media barely acknowledges terrorist attacks that target Christians. And even when they do, they never talk about the real cause driving virtually all of it. If you want to know why terrorism targeting Christians keeps happening, take a look at this map. This shows the places where Christians are the most persecuted and have a high risk of being killed for simply being Christian. Notice anything about these regions? If not, take a look at this map. This right here is a map of where the Muslim population is the highest. And here's where we start to see a pattern emerge. And finally, look at this map. This one shows where the most terrorist attacks occur. So now, at this point, the connection is undeniable. Not only is most of the world's terrorism generated by those claiming to be Muslim, but these radical Muslims seem to account for virtually all of the terrorist attacks that specifically target Christians for simply being Christian. They're systematically hunting down Christians worldwide, and there's a reason for that.
Reason why you have to fight them is because they are Jews and Christians. You should fight those empires.
Listen to what this guy is going to say. This is a guy that speaks out for the Muslims. I don't know. He's always in debates. He's always frontline. He's always standing up for the Muslims. Listen to what he's saying. And listen very carefully, Christians, brothers and sisters. You that follow the NCC party, there's a agenda behind this party, like I said. Now this very same people that supporting the NCC wants to attack the PA because of Ombiza going to Israel, doing a fact check, going to see if it is true what the media is saying. And now he's being hated on for bringing the truth. Come on. What people wants to stop someone for going over to a country to find out for themselves if it is true what is said here in South Africa. There is no apartheid state. Apartheid state is where there is a separation, but there was a Ramadan there. Muslims are walking freely there. Christians are walking freely there. So please, let us all do fact checks and have evidence for what we claim for and what we report. Stop going after majority. When there's a big crowd, you want to fall into the crowd and fit in. But stand up for what is true.
Around you, or those hukumat around you, which are Jew or Christian, until they give the jizya. That's fine. That we already know Islam allows.
Quran 9:29 says to fight those that don't believe in Allah. And Surah 9:5 even goes further, ordering them to kill the unbelievers wherever you find them. These verses and more, even in the hadiths, say to target people based on what they believe. And ever since these verses were documented, until today, we see a small percentage of Muslims actively targeting and killing Christians because they believe that they're commanded by Allah to do so. Now, these beliefs are dangerous, destructive, and completely incompatible with any free society. But instead of calling them out, the media defends them. And rather than condemning the ideology behind these attacks, they stay silent, or worse, they label anyone who speaks out as Islamophobic. And meanwhile, Christian values, the very values that protect and give these journalists human rights, are ignored, dismissed, or even attacked. They don't realize it, but doing so is actively working against their self-interest and in a very dangerous way. If you were to compare across history, whenever Christian ethics have shaped a nation, that nation tends to improve. And when Islamic ideology dominates, we actually see the opposite. And this has been confirmed and documented in places like this. This study from Cambridge showed that Christian majority countries scored from medium to very high when it came to human development, whereas most of the countries that scored the lowest in human development had an Islamic majority population. And in predominantly Muslim countries, we often see things like lower levels of political freedom, educational attainment, and social inclusion, and it's really not hard to see why. At core, Christianity teaches that everyone, including every single Muslim, is made in the image of God and are infinitely valuable. Therefore, everyone is deserving of dignity and human rights. This is why Christian countries tend to have broad protections for all faiths and beliefs. In Christian countries, Muslims are allowed to be Muslim, or they're free to convert to any other religion. But Islam, however, rejects the idea that humans are made in God's image, and that belief has real consequences. This is why leaving Islam will earn you a death sentence in multiple Muslim countries. Freedom of speech? Also restricted, because many Islamic nations enforce blasphemy laws, making it illegal to criticize Islam, which is even punishable by imprisonment or execution. So, given these facts, Christianity fosters peaceful relationships and protects human rights, and Islam simply doesn't. That is, unless it's influenced by Christian ethics and freedoms. Of course, there are exceptions to this fact, and you can find exceptions on both sides. But the overwhelming pattern is still clear. Where Christianity spreads, freedom and prosperity follow. And where radical Islam takes hold, freedoms vanish and societies decline. So now, here's the real question in all of this. If the media isn't run by Muslims, then why are they so quick to defend Islamic theology while ignoring the countless Christians being slaughtered because of it? Well, there's actually a few answers to this question, and Jesus already told us about one of them. The world will simply hate Christians for his name's sake. And when I say that, with that in mind, we still have to be honest. Some of the time, we aren't hated because we're following Christ, but instead for doing wrong or mistreating others. And Jesus never said that persecution was a virtue in itself. If we suffer, it shouldn't be because we're doing wrong, but because we're doing good and are reflecting Christ. As Peter said, if you suffer for doing good and you endure it, this is commendable before God. To this you are called because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his steps. And if you think about this example for Christ, he didn't do anything wrong, but the world still hated him enough to kill him. And unfortunately today, the same thing is happening to our brothers and sisters in Congo and across the world who are not being killed for crimes, not for violence, but simply because they follow Christ. But we can take peace in knowing that their deaths are not in vain. It's part of the very story that Christ told us would unfold. Unlike these terrorists, we don't prepare ourselves to kill for Christ. We prepare ourselves to die for Christ because we love him, just as he prepared to die for us because he loves us. And that love transforms us from the inside out, not into people who harm others, but instead to people who love everyone, even those who want to kill us. That's the power of the gospel, and that's what makes Christianity unlike anything else. So pray for our brothers and sisters around the world who are actively being persecuted for his name's sake. And then be sure to share this video so that way people can see the truth that the media won't tell them. Let's make sure that this truth gets out, all right?
Let us continue to pray for our brothers and sisters in Christ, as we have heard, and also why Christians are being persecuted in Target. As you saw the maps, you can pause over there, you can see why majority Christians being killed in that areas of the land, of the countries, or in the world, and you investigate yourself. God bless you.